Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be. This is Dr. Sarah Langley, and I'm your host of May's Mental Health Month, Overcoming During and After the Pandemic Mental Health Webinar Series. And I thank you so much that you have decided to join us in this conversation so that we can help you to know how to be overall mentally healthy and holistically whole. And I am so grateful for you to show up and just to now look at how can we use this opportunity in this time to work out our relationships. So today or this week has all been about that. How do we now overcome concerning our relationships? And I have a special guest that had decided to join with me all the way from Ireland. And I am so appreciative to her that she decided to be a part of this conversation and really wanted to make sure that you are having your needs met through this conversation. So please make sure that you are also not only just showing up, but actually sharing this out, because sharing is caring, and you never know, you just might save not only a life, but a marriage, a relationship. So I had asked my friend Orla Quin to come in and to really lay down the law when it comes down to relationships, because I find that with this pandemic that we have encountered, right, it really has impacted us mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, socially, but also intimately. You know, I've been reading stories and following up in other areas, not just in the United States. Well, I don't think we have the numbers yet, but in other countries where the rate of divorce is going up because, and with marriages, because of the fact that they have been together, sheltered in place, having nowhere else to go, and having to now really face each other's quirkiness, things that they never even thought that the person had or was like. And it really has put a damper in the lovemaking. And there was so many funny memes out there around, we're going to have a lot of babies after a certain period of time, quarantines and things like that. But I dare to dispute that. I'm not sure if that's going to happen because of the fact that, again, relationships aren't like they used to be nowadays. So we need to now have a conversation to see how we can help you out. So this week is for you. This conversation is for you couples. We did not want to leave you out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my special guest as I read her bio so then we can start the conversation. All right. So, and thank you everyone again for showing up, because they say that 80% of success is just showing up. So I appreciate that you are showing up. And I thank Orla for showing up today. So Orla Quin is an intimacy and relationship expert from Ireland. She upgrades individuals and couples to their 5-star relationship. In this process, they get to overcome their relationship blockages and reset their intimacy dial, where they get to master the art of sensual touch and conscious connection. From this place of sexual mastery, they get to experience the kind of blissful and ecstatic relationships they've always dreamed of. So, hey, with that said, that sounds great to me. What about you? I would love to bring in Orla to the panel. How are you doing, Orla? Thank you for tuning in as I bring you on camera. How are you?
Hi, Dr. Sarah. Thank you for bringing me in. I can't actually start my video. You have to give me permission. So if you want to show my video, start my video there, I can see people, or see you at least, or that you can see me.
All right, everyone. So as we bring in Orla, I thank you for your time, and I thank you so much for your patience. And I am so excited to have this conversation about cabin fever conflict. See, I'm already jumping the gun. It is called cabin fever conflict. And while Orla will work out her camera to go ahead and we can start having the conversation. But I want to know if you have any questions out there. If you have any questions, let us know, because I'll be able to check it out on my end to see if you have any questions or comments. But for now, let's go ahead and just have the conversation in regards to Orla. I wonder where you believe things are when it comes to, the relationships with couples, and are they really intimate? Are they really in love like they used to pre-pandemic? Like, what's the tea about the relationships in regards to what's going on right now? How's it been?
Yeah, well, I think you introduced this topic very well, and and how you framed it, that relationships are really under pressure these days with the pandemic, and I think you're right on cue. Like this this is the pandemic, and I think it's kind of like the elephant in the room, right? Because no one's there when they're put in these restrictions, they're not thinking about the impact this is going to have on relationships. But that's where the shit hits the fan. That's where all the pressure, the cooker is in the home of where all the where our intimate relationships are. So it's putting immense pressure on relationships, and it's why, as you say, relationships are now under focus. They're really kind of magnified. Like any problems that existed before are now magnified because there wasn't, people don't have the distractions, people don't have the the outputs or where they went to before this pandemic. So there was a lot hidden, I suppose, whereas now it's all being shown, and that's the aspect, that's the thing with shadows. They want to be shown, and I think that's where this pandemic has done us a huge favor, is that it has really showed us our shadow aspects when it comes to relationships. And and shadows are an invitation to overcome and bring out into the light, right? So that's where I believe that this is an opportunity, like this is a real opportunity to overcome. Like if you choose, that's the thing, like it takes courageous people to face their shadow, but like it's an amazing opportunity. Once you do, that's where you get to experience the bliss. That's where you get to experience the deepening of connection rather than the separation of connection, which is what you will choose to do if you block, if you choose not to go down the road of healing, right?
So when you say about, and I thank you for sharing that, when you say about the shadow, and when you said that it actually, the pandemic had really helped the relationships, the couples, to really perhaps face or deal with what was, we would call it like an elephant in the room, or whatever the distraction, or I don't want to use the word distraction, but whatever was that thing, that block, or that, I don't know, diffuser that was in between the relationship. If you could say more about that, how this pandemic could be a benefit, not so much of what has happened, but how it really can perhaps bring people closer together.
Yeah, well, it's a real, I mean, this is where many of us have not received any kind of sex education proper. I will say we've all kind of experienced some level of sex education, but probably not a very high standard of one, or relationship education, right? Like how to actually relate in a healthy, respectful way. And a lot of us have had to just self-learn this. We've had to just go on our own kind of education process around this through trial and error, where we've had a failed relationship. We've learned from that. We don't want to do that again. So, so that's been our process of learning around how to relate based on, how we've done it wrong in the past. And and I feel like this is a real opportunity for people because we do have time now, like that's one of the gifts of this pandemic. And it's where a lot of people will say, a pro of this time is that finally I have the space, I have the time to pursue the things that I've always been interested in doing. Or addressing the things that I've needed to do, whether it's like household chores or doing something outside that's been on the long finger to do. But I think this is another topic that actually people should, use it as an opportunity to learn more about how to be in healthy relationship. Like use it as a time to upskill. And like there is so many tools out there that are looking at this now. You know, they weren't in schools, they weren't in our education systems, but they are now in the world where, you know, there are coaches, there are people who are helping people to overcome issues so that they can really come in. And more importantly, what I would say is not even overcoming the issues, but actually learning the tools to facilitate healthy, respectful relating, right? So compassionate communication being one, nonviolent communication, I think is, you know, is one that maybe people might be familiar with. But also what I do more is around looking at intimacy, like actual intimate touch, and how to do that in a healthy way through consensual, conscious connection. So I teach my clients these kind of tools that help them really evolve their intimacy, that can, you know, that can really evolve it, can really grow it, can really sustain it, and that does bring back the spark, right? Because that's something that, you know, when you don't have these tools and the spark goes out, people are at a loss to know what to do to reclaim the attraction, the initial attraction, or the intimacy. But what I would say is just educate yourself. Educate yourself. The tools are out there. Educate yourself, and we can, you know, you can overcome these, you know, and actually have long-lasting relationships. That doesn't mean that relationships have to fail.
Exactly. And I like how you just said, and everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate your time and joining in this conversation. I like what you said there, Orla. What I had attempted to do the other day, while I will not claim to be the expert in what you do, I was helping people to really now have the conversation. First of all, being able to lift your voice and to talk about and be honest in regards to, are we really educated about our own bodies, about our needs? Are we educated in the sense of being able to communicate our desires and our wants, and to know what it is, you know, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to sex, when it comes to pleasure and whatever we see, even when it comes to sex and intimacy, knowing the difference, if there is a difference. There seems to be, probably because of whether it's our upbringing, whether it's because of our faith, whether it's because of whatever, you know, how we interpret what relationship, what sex, what intimacy was, that perhaps many people, and I included, I had to be honest, that there were still things that I didn't know when it comes to sex, when it comes to intimacy, and mixing it all up. And so, like you said, this happening with the pandemic has really seemed to pull the wool or unveil, you know, like our, I don't know, our hangups, or what we really do not know. We don't know what we don't know. So I like that you brought that up, that perhaps, you know, educating on and getting to know and using this time wisely to really up level in our relationship. So yeah, I don't know what's your take on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, and just to go back to what you're talking about with desire, right? Naming desire. And that's not something that a lot of people know about. Oh, can I name my desire? Like, can I actually communicate what I want? Can I communicate what my body needs? You know, and this is something that is absolutely available to you. Is absolutely available to you, but when you know how to ask, right? And when you know that it's okay. Because based on a lot of our upbringing, we are so used to pandering to the expectations of others, of pandering to the expectations of our partner, because we're taught to please. We're taught not to be selfish, right? We're taught not to look after ourselves. We're taught always to look after, to be compassionate to our neighbor, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that extends into relationship. And so what happens in a lot of relationships, because I think this really brings up a big problem, I will say, like it's one of the main issues that I see in my clients again and again and again, is that they have got such a strong pleasing program. That's what I call it, right? It's a pleasing program. It's where you want to please, so you are so you shut down your own needs to please and to satisfy the needs of your partner. And if that becomes practice, if that becomes your culture in the relationship, it's very hard to shift it. It's very, very hard to shift it, because after a while you don't even know what your own needs are. Right?
Right.
You have to, it takes a long time to shift these behaviors, because it starts with awareness, and that's why education is so important, right, Dr. Sarah? So it's like, that's the first step. Awareness is the first step. Yes, I do. Yes, I have permission. Yes, I have permission to address my needs. Okay, but what are my needs? Like, I've been so like, I've spent my whole relationship life ignoring my needs. So how do I suddenly know what they are? Because they're, I've suppressed them so far down, I can't access them. That they will come. They will come, based on that first initial step of awareness. Then it will, that's the first step, and it's inevitable. Then they will come back.
Right. And I'm glad that you said it, because now you're speaking my language when it comes to the mindset, the fact of how we've been conditioned, how we've been programmed when it comes to the trigger word of sex. Oh my gosh, we can't talk about that. And I remember actually counseling a client some years ago, where trauma had happened with one of the spouse. And it was hard for that person to really be intimate with their significant other because of trauma that has happened years before they were married, and how that's carried in throughout the relationship, and then how it's communicated, how that's conveyed, how that is perceived, how that is taken by the significant other, in regards to, oh, that means that I'm not desirable enough. That means that I don't do it for them. That means that whatever they're trying to answer, that question mark, and I talk about a lot with my clients, is that when we have a question mark, it has to be answered. Even if we answer it incorrectly, we just are settled with the fact that we were able to answer it. So if there is no answer, if there isn't any communication happening, then now it presents a rift in the relationship. And it's like it could have been settled if they were able to communicate that. So being able, like you said, to become aware, because everything starts with the mindset, and wherever and however our mindset is, the rest follows. So I think that it probably is best to at least be able to communicate or become aware of yourself. And I love what you said in regards to being in a position to please, because again, condition that it's about our neighbor. It's about putting everyone first and making ourselves dead last, without realizing that we are subconsciously telling ourselves that we're unimportant, that we're not as important than other people, that we are to become last and make everyone first, make their needs first, make their desires first. And then after a while, we lose ourselves, because now we don't even know, and taking the time on who we are, what we like, what we want, to be able to communicate that to our significant other. So it just seems like it's a maze. Orla, how do we navigate through this cabin fever conflict? How do we now get to the other side, better and stronger than ever in our love life or sex life?
Yeah, well, great question, and I suppose the important one that everybody really wants to know, like, how do we use this time to overcome and grow? And and it's without a question, I know that the route to doing this is taking self-responsibility, right? Looking at ourselves, looking at what some of the programs that we hold. So whether there is trauma that we are holding on to, really taking time to address that, but addressing it in a very compassionate way, right? Because trauma is where we really need to bring in the self-compassion, and is where we really do need the time to process this without being put under pressure. And so, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's something that actually really does need to be addressed before you can free your sexual energy, right? Because it won't come without addressing trauma or any kind of sexual wounding that's already there. It really needs to be held. It really needs to be expressed, right? And expressed in a very safe way. So if that's not with your partner, then that's with someone that you trust, a counselor, or someone like me, someone like Dr. Sarah, that where there's a container for, a safe container where there is no judgment, and it's a very neutral space for that to be held and for that to be dealt with. The for couples who are under pressure, where it's not necessarily that there's sexual trauma there or any kind of history of sexual trauma, it's just now there's just other pressures being played on them. Very often the external fear, the cultural fear in the atmosphere around this pandemic is reflecting into being brought into the home and brought into relationships. So the fear that's consuming people is actually then coming out in anger.
Yes.
Or repressed anger being passive aggressive behavior, which can be very, very common in a lot of our relationships, where those of us who are on the receiving end, we are walking on eggshells around this kind of situation. So again, like, I'm just bringing up some of the things, some of the issues that we're having to overcome, because ultimately we can't move beyond these until we really look at them, until we really identify them, until we stop ourselves and take self-responsibility around them, not putting blame, not expecting others to heal us, not expecting our partner to fix the situation. We have to let go of that program. That's a big one. And we taking, I would say, this is one key message that I'd like to get across today, is really the self-responsibility, taking the self-responsibility for our sexual health. And that means really addressing, okay, do I need my own space, or do I need intimacy? And if I need my own space, where are my boundaries? How confident am I in saying no? If I need my intimacy, how confident am I in asking for that? Right? Like,
Right.
These are the things that make us uncomfortable. Sometimes we have to be uncomfortable in order to get what we want.
I'm so glad you said that, in terms of being uncomfortable and understanding with that, the fact, everyone, is sometimes you have to just know what emotions are saying, how you're feeling, what your feelings are saying. Honestly, getting intimate with yourself, like getting to know you and what your likes are, what your dislikes, before even trying to find out what your significant other like and doesn't like. A lot of times we don't even know, again, we don't know a lot about much of who we are and what we want and what we don't want, to then be able to understand our significant other's needs and wants. So it should be like a shared partnership. And sometimes it does take to just face or get uncomfortable, or get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Like, just being able to sit in and be able to then understand and know, what is this saying to you? When it comes to relationships, when it comes to intimacy, when it comes to sex, what is it saying for you? And this quite frankly, this pandemic really have put us in positions where we have to sit and then kind of get to know ourselves and what this all means. How is this serving us, the pandemic? How is our relationship serving us? How is our oneness serving us? And being able to go from there. So I think that's some excellent points, Orla. And I was checking to see if people had any questions. Of course, they're just saying hi. They appreciate this time. And I know that for the sake of time, let's get into some spice.
Yes, let's do that.
So what things, in terms of, I know it's your wheelhouse in terms of, I don't know, and here I go getting all prudent and stuff. I'm getting all now, like, all right, backing up and stuff. So I probably have to talk to you. This type of help. But yeah, to talk about sex, and I guess I don't know if we should talk about positions, if we should talk about what helps to really make a dynamic sex life. Like, what things, please, whatever comes to mind for you that you feel that would be best for our audience to know, feel free. Let her rip, Orla.
Yeah, okay. Spice it up. Let's spice it up. So, Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to your own common knowledge around this, because everybody there's a romantic in everyone, right? And I think it's about exercising your romantic juices. So, and
Okay.
the romantic juice, right? So it's like what you would do or what you would like to do with a lover, with an intimate partner. Go on a date, right? And so there's lots of ways to be romantic. Go on a date, really treat each other, cook a lovely meal. Something that I think is absolutely necessary in a healthy love life is touch, massage. Um, this is where, this I don't want to get into this too much, because this is a whole other area, and this is really what I focus on with the couples I work with, teaching them how to do massage, how to give sensual touch and conscious connection, like conscious touch. But this is what is really, I would say, is very lacking in relationships. So to spice up your life, this is something that everyone needs to do in order to spice it up, and it might not be the quick and fast way that people are used to spicing things up and getting aroused, but ultimately it pays off in much greater reward when there's time, when couples take their time to love make, to really prepare for the act of love making. That's when you get the deepest, most intimate, most blissful experience with time. Yeah. So
Well,
so it's less about the spice, it's more about the sensuality, I would say. It's more about getting into a sensual place. So I'm going to turn the spice around and get all sensual on you. Yeah.
sounds like that takes too long. Like if people are busy, so with the pandemic, so one person had asked, well, look, I'm working. Who has time to have sex? And I have to take care of the kids. I have to be a teacher now. I have to, work. I have to cook. I have to do all these things. And I barely have any time for myself like I used to before the pandemic. Who has time? Who has the energy to do all that? How do you address that, or how do you answer that, Orla? Because that's many people who are saying that.
Yeah, well, my answer would be get organized.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Get organized,
Yeah.
y'all. How so? So what, schedule the time? Like, should they schedule
Yeah, I
time?
would say schedule. I would say schedule time. So I would say schedule a date. I would also, I would say schedule, not half an hour. I would say schedule, you know, at least 3 to 4 hours.
Really? Okay.
Where, yeah, at the least, I would even go for a full day.
Wow.
But it's where you are really, I mean, and this is where couples need to be really comfortable with each other, right? That there's no performance, there's no kind of pressure to perform, there's no kind of pressure to do anything that they're not comfortable with. It's really about connection, right? Because the closer the connection, the more trust in the connection, the easy and the more bliss can come from that connection, right? So that's why I'm saying it is so important to take time. It's I can't stress it highly enough, right? Yeah, you can have the quick fix. That's that's maybe what you're referring to, but it's not for the long term. It's not for the long term. What I would say is, if you want to really be serious about uh, evolving, growing in your relationship, in your intimate relationship, then that needs time. It needs to be scheduled. It needs nurturing, nourishment, and it doesn't necessarily need to be explosive, right? The explosiveness will come, but it takes time to build that. And I would say use this time to I know we can't actually do courses in massage courses at this time, but I would say start researching this. Start researching who you can. I suggest Lomi Lomi. That's where I started out. But you know, these tools are so important when it comes to intimacy. Knowing how to massage one another.
Okay.
That is what we're craving for. We're craving for touch, and really conscious touch.
Which is very, very true. Just to amen that. And thank you for that, Orla. Thank you, everyone, for your questions and your comments. Yeah, I had shared about how the three things that just as human nature is in regards to things that we have missed or lost during this pandemic. We lost control. So that's a big thing for any person, to really be able to be autonomous, be independent, self-sufficient, to call the shots on their lives. Also connection, because we are created to be relational. So the fact that for many people, they have had a struggle with now social distancing, sheltering in place. And while we do have Zoom and we have other technology to help us to see each other, it's not like being in the presence of, because of the energy, because of how we are just created. And then, of course, purpose, not knowing, well, what is the meaning of life now, you know, and what is the meaning of life after. But what I love, what you said, to really emphasize, everyone, is about time. While there's many of you who are like, look, well, I don't have time, and, you know, it's about wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. It's all about, you know, quick fixes and getting it in and whatever you call it. If you want your relationship to overcome after the pandemic and you want it to be sustainable, if you don't want to be a part of this rising statistic of divorces because of this situation, then maybe it's best for you to now consider, because like she used the word serious. If you really take serious your relationship, if the goal and the intention and the focus is for you to now have an even more rewarding relationship, sex life, love life, then if that's the intention, then you have to focus on that. And then now reverse engineer it. So then what needs to happen for that to now result, you know? And that part is time. That part is having to schedule, and not take that bad or bad thing. The fact that you may have to schedule time to be intimate, to connect, to be sensual, to have a sex life with your significant other, because look, this is unprecedented times, right? Things have happened. And so now we have to take, you know, unprecedented measures, so to speak. So do what you have to do for the sake of winning and overcoming and sustaining your marriage. Do what is necessary. And what Orla is saying is really truth, you know, because it's really going to help you to sustain for the long-term effects. Anything else, Orla, that you would like to share that you think that we would need to know? One other person has said, just real quick, what is the difference between sex and intimacy? Is there a difference?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say there's not really. It's just intimacy is so much broader. I see intimacy as being a whole spectrum of sex. Like, you can say sex is a whole spectrum, but what people tend to mean when they say sex, they actually mean penetration. And so that's where the confusion becomes, you know, because sex is so much broader than penetrative sex. So I think that's more the confusion. I would say intimacy and sex are kind of, you know, because sexual behavior is really kind of intimacy. But intimacy can also, sorry, and I'm kind of going in circles here, but intimacy can be more than sex. You can have an intimate conversation with someone. You can have an intimate, you know, dinner with someone that's not, you know, that's platonic. So intimacy extends beyond a sexual context, if you know what I mean. So yeah, so they are different, but also sex, I just want to be clear, is broader than sexual penetration, which most people represent with sex.
True, that's true. Intimacy, when you use the word trust, what I found was in counseling couples. So my first thing, I don't know if I ever told you this, Orla, when I first started my early days or early years of counseling, it was actually counseling couples. and helping them to restore. I had, like, I was always big into acronyms. So it was like restore, revitalize, and reconnect in their marriage. And so I wanted to reset them. That was the name of my practice at the time, Reset LLC. And I found that the biggest issue was the trust to be vulnerable, the trust to unveil themselves and truly be who they are without judgment, without question. And I find that with relationships, with couples in particular, that rift or that thing that's in between has been that is, can they really trust them? And you would think that, oh, well, you said I do, you married them, or hey, you're sleeping with them, why would you not trust? But it is another level, another layer. And when you said that earlier about, I think that when it comes to intimacy, that trust is a big factor, to be able to unveil yourself and to just be who you are, good, bad, and indifferent, and it be okay without, any concerns or hangups. Because I think that if people can now just feel that they can be themselves, they can let loose, they can be limitless and be free without any concern, then that I can see how that can bridge the gap or bring people closer, because now they can trust that they can just be who they are without any harm or foul. So maybe perhaps it's the same thing when it comes to the intimacy or the relationship piece.
Exactly. And that's, and absolutely. I want to I think that's an important piece to bring back again, is the taking time, because, like I said, we are so programmed to kind of act out a little bit in our relationships, like put a good front on, or, perform in a way that we are expected to be seen. And and very often we just don't feel safe. We represent vulnerability with weakness. And actually that's the true path to really deepening a relationship, when you can be truly authentic with someone, when you can truly show up as yourself, as your vulnerable self. Your vulnerability is your strength, I would say. And so really, when you can be that raw, that's when you can spend a whole day with someone and that does not shock you, that doesn't cause fear, anxiety. That's where you can really be with someone in total trust.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Here's one more question for you, because I know that we are at our time. Is there a difference? You mentioned something that made me think about this, and we were talking about this yesterday in one of the conversations that I had. Is there a difference between, and I'll put some context to it, is there a difference between the size, how's it go, y'all? The size of the boat or the motion in the ocean? I don't know how that goes. Because there's times that people are trying to compensate, with there's a saying about how, let's say with guys, that if they get big vehicles and trucks, it's making up for what they're lacking in other places. And this is not a male bashing session, everybody, okay? That's just the first thing that came to mind. But if you find that people are inadequate, they feel inadequate about themselves because of their size, because they're small or they're too big or whatever the case is, that's another thing that seems to be in between the relationship, to really get close and to feel trust, to trust and to feel vulnerable and all that. How do people get through that or get over that to come closer together?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to what I was saying about the performance side of things, that we have to live up to our persona, or we have to live up to this kind of profile that we've, or this body that we've been given. So whether it's, whether we've a very sexy body and we're well endowed, is what you're talking about, we have to therefore exude the confidence or the sexual confidence that comes with that, right? There's that kind of false perception that, because there's pressure on people that look a certain way to act a certain way. And the same then conversely with someone who doesn't have the sexual body they want, doesn't feel like their genitalia is the right size, shape, etc. And as a result, it's where they act out a certain way because of that. And I'm saying that the way to overcome all of this, because when it comes to true relationships, truth and trust, establishing true trust, is where there is no judgment, where judgment doesn't exist, right? So it doesn't matter what you look like, it's our connection that's important. And that's the key, is really going beyond the physical. Really, at the end of the day, it's we're sexually evolving to that, in this age, I would say, to really go beyond the physical, really go beyond the physical and go to that place of true connection, where true trust can actually be built. Because if we're just operating from the area of the genitals, sex is just coming from the genitals, it's not connected to the heart, then we are just satisfying our desire. We're just in the place of desire, and that tires. That tires, and that's why relationships break up. And I know this is something that probably we shouldn't really be finishing on, because it's a big, it's a big topic. But ultimately, what I want to leave people with is the 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 truth to lasting relationships is when all of that can be left behind and true connection can be made, heart to heart.
That's good. That's good. So thank you so much, Orla, with that. Thank you, everyone, for your questions and your comments, and the fact that at the end of the day, everyone, it is about connection. It's about trust. It's about being, it's about not having to focus on the performing, but more so on the time of true connection for long-lasting relationships, for sustainability, to help you to overcome post-pandemic, to sustain your relationship. So I'm glad that that's a great way to bring this to a close. And if you have any questions for Orla, if you want to know, well, how do you now, have a better understanding with touch, with sensuality, with connection, and being conscious of it, Orla, how could they find you or connect with you?
Sure. Do you want me to type in I can give people my email address, so I don't mind, I can type it into the chat here. I don't know, will people see it?
Well, I have your email, so what I'll do is I'll just put it into the chat on their end. And I didn't know if there, and when, you have any other offers or things like that, then I'll make sure that I'll give them the link to that, so then they can actually, connect with you and take their love life to the next level.
Yeah, and there is actually an offer that I really do want to invite your guests to consider. We talked earlier about the shadow, and there's an amazing program coming up starting in July. It's a 9-month program, online group program, on sexual shadow work and integration, and it's being run by the Shakti Shiva Academy, which is based in South Africa. But it's a very it's a school, a very highly I highly recommend it. I know the facilitators there, and I'm going to be part of this faculty, so I really honor the work that they do, in looking especially at this shadow aspect of sexuality, because like I said before, it's really important to embrace all aspects of our sexuality in order to come into true sexual freedom, liberty, because it's only then that we can really get to discover the true bliss. I would say, I talk about it in terms of the rainbow of bliss that we can actually experience from our intimate world. But in order to do that, we really do need to look at some of these shadow aspects. So this is a program that will really hold you in that safe place where you can work through your shadow work, navigate through the murky terrain of, your sexual shadows, and gifting you the capacity to hold everything in love and capacity, so that you can treat yourself to the sexual freedom that you want to achieve.
Okay. All right. And is there a link, or you sent it to me, I can just send it to them, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they already asked for your email, so I already sent that to them. And yeah, so look forward to some more individuals who perhaps you can really help them to take their love lives to the next level. So Orla, thank you so much for your time and really appreciated this conversation and look forward to more conversations like these to really help individuals or couples to overcome during and after the pandemic. So thank you.